Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sportlight podcast. On this week's Sportlight podcast, we're talking to former college basketball player and high school basketball coach, Mason Sawyer. Mason had an incredibly tragic event happen in his life nearly a year ago where his wife, children, a brother were killed in a car accident. And he talks about how the lessons he learned from playing sports helped him to develop the resiliency necessary to respond to this tragic event. This is a life-changing discussion with an incredible person.
Welcome to the Sportlight podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Well, everybody, I'm here with Mason Sawyer, former college basketball player, and Mason's story is incredible. It's an incredible story of resilience and a response to one of the most difficult things I've ever heard of someone face, Mason, and I think that as we talk together, it will really help our athletes and parents and coaches who listen to this podcast see how sports is more than about just winning games, but it's about building attributes in people that will help them respond to life in the future. And I think your story is a great example of that. So thank you so much, first of all, for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So thanks for reaching out.
Yeah. So just to give us a little bit of your sports background, if you would take a minute and just let us know what you did here. Basketball player, West Jordan Jaguar, right? Tell us a little bit about your high school basketball experience.
Yeah, West Jordan Jaguars. I graduated 2009, and I just loved basketball since I was a little kid. I mean, there's little home videos of me running around with a basketball, dribbling when I'm like 3 years old type of thing, you know. And I had older brothers, and they just beat up on me growing up and kind of taught me to work hard and deal with adversity type of thing. And then I got to high school, and I was lucky to be on a really good high school team. I was one of the captains of the team. I mean, listen, I was like Region 3 most outstanding player for my region my senior year. I got a full ride scholarship to Boise State after my junior year. I was a good basketball player. There's a good chance, though, that I was the third best player on my team in high school. Like, we were low, like we had some dudes.
Yeah.
So like one of our guys, Reyes, he went to Nebraska. Another one of our guys he went to SUU and then some other places. And like we had a guy named DJ. He was 6 man. Like, he ended up going to the NFL. So that just shows you, like, even our lower guys who weren't great at basketball, like, this is a future NFL athlete. So we had a really good team, and our senior year we had a really good season. We played Lone Peak in the state championship. Lone Peak had Tyler Hawes and Nate Austin and some of those BYU guys back in the day, and we were able to play well enough, and we beat them that night. And that was a heck of a night, man. I think about that. Yeah. And I still, you still text your buddies about that night, or, hey, we got to pull out the film and watch the game again type of thing. So, and listen, I played a lot of basketball for a lot of coaches and a lot of different levels. I never enjoyed playing basketball more than I did in high school with, like, my group of buddies growing up, and the high school that you're a part of. There's just something special about high school sports, I think. And I played college basketball, but it didn't come close to high school. I loved playing high school basketball. And I had an unbelievable high school basketball coach that taught me a lot of important life lessons for sure. I signed a letter of release from Boise State. I ended up going to Dixie State, which is a Division II school, which I have no shame of saying. I mean, listen, you probably understand this, but the difference between Division I athletes and Division II athletes, or NAIA athletes, or JUCO, is not, like, if you're talking about talent and skill and knowledge of the game, it's very equal. The biggest difference and this is the brutal reality of being a college athlete, is they're going to, like, take me, for example. I'm 5'10". They're going to try to find someone like me that can do what I can do, but who's 6'3".
Right.
And that's the difference. That's D1 is the 6'3" version of me. And like, really, that's the best way to put it. But I think a lot of high school athletes think of like D1 as this really upper tier. And then like, no, like it's really more equal than we realize. It's just the length and athleticism. But that's all outside of our control. You can't really control how tall you're going to get and that type of stuff. But
well, and as it applies to what we're talking about too, there, even in D1, so few of those guys go on and end up professionally providing for themselves with a sport, right?
Yeah.
But the lessons learned in an NAIA school or a Division II school or a Division III school or Division I, those life lessons are the same. It's not like someone had, besides maybe crowd size being an element or something like that, but the men and women who walk away from playing a college sport or high school sports or whatever, no matter what level they ascended to, they're walking away with the same life lessons and everything else that the others are. And so, which is really important.
I remember thinking like, because I got this Division I scholarship, and then I went to a D2 school, and I remember having thoughts of, I'm supposed to be D1. I'm going to tear it up D2. No, it was hard, man. There's some players at the D2 level, JUCO level. I mean, there's some legit basketball players. So if you're a high school athlete, I wouldn't read into that stuff very much. If you can get to the next level at all, I think that's incredibly difficult, and you should be happy with it. Honestly, it's really rare. It's really hard to get to the next level. So yeah.
Awesome. And I want to get in a little bit, Mason, with some of those life lessons, because I came upon your story and learned about your story, really a tragic story, but it would be a story that anyone would have the hardest time responding to. I mean, for me, if I were to pick something to go through in my life, what you've been through might be last on my list, man. I mean, just so difficult. But when we face those moments in life, when we need to be resilient, the life lessons we've learned from sports on how to respond to difficult circumstances are so valuable. Would you just take a second and let our listeners know just kind of what you've been through in the last year or so, and let your story a little bit?
Yeah, so we just came up on the year mark, the 1 year anniversary a couple weeks ago. Time's a weird thing for me now. It's just, I have a hard time. It just goes super fast and then super slow. I think all the trauma has caused that to happen for me. But so anyway, just grasping a year is weird for me, because it feels like it happened 20 years ago and it feels like it happened 20 minutes ago at the same time, type of thing. But July 25th, 2021, my wife, my son Riggins, my daughter Franki, my son Blue went to a family reunion / family vacation in Bear Lake, Utah. And I couldn't go because I had to work. And we were living in St. George, Utah, southern Utah. So it was about a 4-5 hour drive to Bear Lake. And I couldn't go. I was working. And my brother, I have an older brother who also lives in St. George, and his wife couldn't go because of work. And two of his kids also couldn't go. But my brother Race could go, and his youngest son Ryder could go. So they went with my wife and my family to the family reunion. So they were driving together. And then on the way back home that Sunday, they were in Fillmore. So probably halfway, they were 2 hours away from St. George, and dust storm, really powerful, quick dust storm kicks up on this interstate and just causes a whiteout essentially, and causes a really nasty, terrible 20-car pileup that kills 8 people, I believe. And 5 of those people are my family. So I lost my wife, my son Riggins, my daughter Franki, my brother Race and my nephew Ryder in the car accident. And Blue, my son Blue, he was in the car and he was the only survivor of the accident. So they life flighted him to the hospital that night, and then I had to drive 4 hours to the hospital, and I had to drive through the very accident that caused them to die, and that was really hard. I had to drive through that to get to the hospital, and yeah, it's hard to put emotions. It's just your whole world is gone essentially, and that the last year I'm still trying to figure out how to put it into words, honestly. But honestly, it's kind of like, you've been in a baseball game or a basketball game where it's just not going well for you, and you look up at the scoreboard and you're just down 30 with 5 minutes left. You know that feeling?
Yeah.
There's just nothing you can do. That's kind of what it feels like. Like I'm always like, I'm not going to get them back. They're gone. There's really nothing I can do essentially to change that. All I can focus on and all I can care about and worry about is, the 5 minutes I have left. The game, we have 5 minutes left of the game. We're not going to win. Right? I'm sure you've had a coach give you the same story. I feel like we all have, but essentially you're in that timeout and the message is, hey, we're going to lose. But how are we going to play the last 5 minutes? Though, like, I love those moments in sports now. Like when I'm watching games and it gets ugly, it gets to be a blowout. Like I am hooked. Like who's left? Who's still trying? Because they know in the back of their mind it's not going to work out for them. But you still got to give it everything you got. And that's one of the things that bugs me. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but I watch a lot of Little League basketball, high school basketball, and I even myself, like I play in these adult city leagues with sports, and it just seems like the last minute of the game, if it's not close, the refs just call it. Hey, that's the game. And they call the game because they don't want fights to happen. And we need to finish the game. We have 2 minutes left. They have to handle losing, and the other team has to handle being a good sport. This is a big part of why we're playing the game is how we handle losing and winning.
Yeah.
And this is just one small example of how we're doing this in sports and as a society to protect people from losing. Like we don't want people to experience the feeling of loss and losing. It's painful. So let's try to not put ourselves in those situations. So everyone's a winner. Everyone gets a trophy type of thing. Let's just call the game. There's 2 minutes left. There's no way they can win. No, you got to finish the game. That we started the game. Now we got to finish. Like little things like that I get into now. And I care a lot about because that's what you have control over. I can control how hard I play. I can't get my family back. It's a terrible thing. I can't change that it's terrible. But I can focus on and make this car accident and losing my family. If I handle it the right way, I think I can make something really meaningful and really beautiful come from that. And that's what my whole mission is now is I'm going to take this terrible, sad experience, this accident, and I'm going to use it to try to help as many people as I can. And sports is one of the best ways to teach kids and to mold people who are resilient is sports. And why is it sports? Is because there's winning and losing. And we have to let that happen. We have to let our players, our athletes, our kids lose and let them lose. Don't give them excuses. It's not the ref's fault. It's not the coach's fault. Look in the mirror. What can you do? What can we do? But it's scary. Honestly, it's scary that we're just creating this culture of let's not have kids experience loss and failure, and let's not have anyone feel bad all the time. And I have lots of stories from my childhood and coaches and parents, my parents that I think have taught me resiliency at a young age. And I'm sorry, I'm talking forever right now. Can I share one with you?
Yeah, no, this is awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
I remember I was playing Little League football, and I was a quarterback. and we weren't good. Like, we were not good at football. We won like 2 games a year usually. And I was the quarterback, and I don't remember. I think we were playing. I don't remember who we were playing. And I probably threw 5 interceptions, had a couple fumbles, just like the worst game. And I'm this little kid. I'm probably 10, 11. And I don't cry, or at least I don't remember crying, like in front of my teammates or anything. But we finish the game, we get our orange slices, we get in the car, and I just remember I put my head down and I just start crying. And my dad's in the front seat, and my dad puts his hand around my neck, kind of comforted me, and says, I love watching you play. And I said, thanks, Dad. And he didn't say anything else. He just let me sit there for a minute. And then he said, and then I started talking about how bad I was playing. I'm like, Dad, I just played so bad. I feel awful for my team. And my dad said, he said, yeah, that was a rough game. And he just kind of let me sit there in it for a minute. And then he said, but I love watching you play, and I know how hard you work, and you're just going to learn from this. And I don't even know if my dad remembers me telling me that. But my dad let me feel bad. My dad let me be accountable. He didn't blame the receivers. He didn't badmouth the offensive lineman. He didn't badmouth the coach. He'd not one time, never had a discussion like that with my dad. And he just let me feel it, and that awful feeling of pain. And that's motivating. That feeling of pain and anger and sadness from losing is good, because that's what lights the fire for you to improve. Winning's easy. Teams that win, it's easier for them to deal with adversity. Losing's hard. But that's the real test of a man or a woman, is how do you handle failure? And I feel like I was taught that. I mean, I have another one. I remember I was a really good basketball player when I was a little kid, like elementary school. I was really good. I was better than all my friends. And then I remember I got invited on this travel team, like this AAU travel team. I'm like, man, this is cool. And every time I play a basketball game in Utah, and I don't want to sound cocky or arrogant, but when I was little, I was usually the best one on the floor. Like, I just kind of did my thing. So I remember going, and I honestly thought I was going to the NBA. Like, I'm going, because, you play all these games and you're always the best player, and then you watch the NBA game. Like, I'm going to be there one day. Yeah. And so I remember we went to Florida, and I just get my butt kicked. Like, our team loses, but me individually, like, I'm turning the ball over. I can't handle the pressure. The game's moving so fast. And I just remember coming home from that trip and having the mindset of, okay, I don't think I'm going to go to the NBA, but I want to play college basketball. I can do that. I'm good enough to do that. And that was my new goal. Like, I think my parents and the coaches I had just kind of instilled this sense of, I was just really self-aware as a young kid and understood how hard I needed to work and different things like that. But that's another example. I remember telling my dad I was disappointed in how bad I was playing. And he never gave me an excuse. He never gave me a reason out. He just said, yeah, you got to get better, type of thing.
Yeah, that's so important to build resilience, that we always talk about on our podcast. We've done a lot of episodes on this very thing. I mean, it seems to gravitate toward we could control attitude and effort. We can't control outcome. Mm-hmm. We can't control if someone's just bigger, faster, stronger. And so when we give our kids those outs, when it was the ref's fault, like you said, or your stupid coach doesn't realize what we've realized, or that other kid was cheating, or whatever it might be, it's almost like we're, if someone's bench pressing and they're trying to gain muscle, that muscle they're trying to build in these instances is resiliency, but we just keep pulling up the bar for them.
Yeah.
So they aren't.
That's a really good analogy.
They think they're doing something, but they aren't. They aren't building. It's not tearing them down at all, and they aren't learning to respond to that. And so we keep just spotting them and pulling up that bar, and just nurturing their tender little feelings instead of, I love some of the phrases you used, that great tribute to your father, that he let you sit in your pain. You know, he didn't give you excuses.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we so quickly want to pull away the pain that our kids are experiencing in sports. We want to pull that away. And I think when we take a step back and look at the grand picture of life, that might be the most valuable experience they get from sports,
Yeah.
is learning to deal with that failure and learning to respond, learning to get up when they get knocked down, learning to be embarrassed and still go out and do it. All of those things are going to apply in life. And so as you've experienced this, this tragedy in your family, let me just pause here. I know it was a while ago, but man, I am so sorry that you've experienced this. And as I became aware, I remember that crash actually, and then, you know, was put in contact with you and watched a few of the videos that you've done. You spoke recently at at Utah Tech now, I guess, Utah Tech University, and we'll put some links to those in our bio here, or in the show notes here. But
Cool.
I was just so inspired. I'm crushed for you, but I'm inspired by your response. You've talked about that, how your dad reacted, but are there a few things as you've experienced this, a few lessons in sports that you didn't realize maybe you were learning at the time, but now you're going, I kind of rely on that. My mind goes back to those things, you know, that I learned in sports to handle this very difficult situation?
Yeah, I had a really good high school basketball coach named Scott Briggs. And he'd tell us all the time things like focus on what you can control, don't ride the roller coaster type of stuff, moving on to the next play. And, you know, it's funny because losing my family is such a big, terrible, sad story. But it's the simple little things, like the little life lessons that have helped me the most, honestly. It's not some big, elaborate, cool story, or it's like the simple little quotes and little sayings that coaches actually tell their players a lot. But when I was a player, it just kind of, you just hear it so many times. It's kind of, okay, yeah. And then something like this happens. And I never realized like how much I actually lean on those simple things I hear every day. But like focusing on what I can't control, that might be the biggest thing that's helped me. I have so much anger and pain, and I can't even, like, misery all the time. Those emotions we have when we're angry or upset is when we're focusing on things outside of our control, usually. And that's why we're so angry, is we have no control over it. And so when I think about what happened to my family, I'm powerless, and it's really frustrating. But when I put my focus, time, and energy into things I can control, like this, then great things happen for me. So that's a huge life lessons, and athletes need to hear that. This is Blue, by the way.
What's up, Blue?
Say what's up.
How are you, buddy?
I was talking about you a little bit. But honestly, if I could spend all day focusing on things outside my control, and some days I do that, and those are my bad days where I just can't get out of that headspace of thinking about them. Mm-hmm. But it just doesn't do you any good, really, because at the end of the day, you have to focus, like, what can I do? What can I control? And I'm lucky. I have Blue survived the car accident. I still have great people in my life. I have some opportunities to do some great things. I don't love what happened. I'm never going to love what happened. I don't think it's part of any plan. I think it's meaningless. I don't think it means anything. It's up for me to give it meaning. It's up to me to make something good out of it. But that's up to me. If I just hid in my basement all day long, then the car crash is meaningless. Doesn't mean anything. Didn't do anyone any good. It's up to me to change that. I can make good things happen out of this. I know that. And it's going to suck, and I don't have to love it, but I can love the opportunity to do it, type of thing. Yeah. But I'm never going to get over this loss. This is never going to be something that I'm over. It's always going to be with me. And I've accepted that. And because I've accepted that, now I'm able to do things. But you got to focus, like you can't, if you're not getting enough minutes, if you don't think you're going to make the team, if you got cut from the team or whatever it is, like what's done is done. You have to focus on, okay, what is within my control? What can I do? How can I earn more minutes? If I'm not the starting quarterback, maybe can I play slot receiver? What can you do to help your team? Can you be the first one to practice? Can you be the last one to leave? Can you watch more film? That's within your power and control. And if you're just going to complain about things outside of your control, you're never going to be a very good athlete, and you're never going to be very good at anything, honestly. You got to just worry about what you can do.
That is a profound lesson that I think sports teaches, and it's almost like you don't know you need it. I'm sitting here thinking of the scene from Karate Kid, like you're waxing the car, you're painting
wax
the fence
on, wax
and everything.
off.
You don't know what's going on the whole time you're playing sports, but then one of these things happens, life throws a punch at you.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, all those things I've been doing in sports, they've prepared me for this moment. Now, of course, it doesn't take away the pain. It doesn't take away the loss. But what you're doing is going to impact, you could either impact nobody.
Right.
Like you said, sit in your basement.
Yeah.
And just wallow in the sorrow that I'm sure there are some days like that, by the way.
Yeah.
Or you can say, what can I do? What can I do to bring honor to my family's name, to my wife, to my children, to my brother? And then as you start doing those things within your control, then it can lift you higher than you would have been otherwise.
And what I've learned from, if you focus on things within your control, the more you do that, it's just, you kind of realize you get more things within your control, if that makes sense. But
tell me more about that. Yeah.
I don't know if you're literally getting more things in your life that you're in control over, or if you're just seeing new ways in life that you have more control over. But I've just learned that as I focus on things within my control, things actually open up and more things are within my power. You start to get the power back. And that's one of the worst things of this accident is you just feel powerless. Like, what was that? What happened? And part of getting the power back is focusing on what you can control. And sports has given me this mentality. I'm sure you watched the Michael Jordan, The Last Dance documentary.
Yeah.
Right. And Michael Jordan had this perspective of, he would just kind of exaggerate scenarios, or sometimes maybe even make them up to like piss himself off, and then just go like take it out on people. And he would tell us these stories. Sports gives you that mindset. And after the accident, I had the mindset of, I had a lot of mindsets. I wanted to die. Then I just wanted to run from everything. And now I've flipped into this mindset of, the way I look at the car accident is life, fate, whatever you want to call it. Let's call it life. Life has taken my family away. And my mindset is, oh, like, you think that's going to put me down? You don't think I'm going to get back up? You think I'm just going to lay down the rest of my life? No. Like, all right, bring it on then. If you think that's going to hold me down, like, you made a mistake. You should never have taken them from me, because now look out. I'm coming for you. And I'm going to make something amazing out of this. And that's kind of my mentality now. And, I don't know if that's how life actually works. I don't know if life's like out to get me type of thing. But that's when I'm in my best mindset, that's the attitude I have. It's like, all right, F you then. Yeah. And the most powerful mindset I kind of psych myself into is, life was trying to take everyone away from me, but Blue survived. Blue survived, and you weren't counting on that. But Blue was strong enough to survive. Because he survived, now I'm going to survive. And now watch out. Like, I started this 1090 podcast, started 1090 Instagram, and I'm going for this thing. And I'm not scared of failure. I'm not scared of what people say. It's pedal to the metal. 1090, I'm going to share my message, and we'll see what happens type of thing.
Tell me about 1090.
Well, 1090, I'm sure you've heard the quote, life is 10% what happens to you, 90% how you handle it. Mm-hmm. That's a Lou Holtz quote, famous football coach, Notre Dame coach mostly. My dad, he would send me that quote a lot after the accident. And through email, and we'd have conversations about it. And, you know, I eventually felt I was just kind of sick of being miserable. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to like get up and do something about this. And so I wanted to start a podcast about overcoming adversity. So what the podcast is about is we invite people on the show. They talk about essentially like the worst things that have happened to them. That's the 10%. And then we talk about the 90%, like, okay, what's worked for you? How have you dealt with your trauma? How have you overcome that obstacle? What didn't work for you? So we can build a community and a culture of helping people deal with really traumatic events or big obstacles, give them things that other people have used to help them navigate through it, type of thing. And the buddy, my childhood friend that I do it with, he has a rare form of dwarfism called Ellis Van Creveld. So he has a really powerful story about overcoming adversity too. And so that's what we do. Me and him have this podcast. We just started it. So I'm doing that. And then I'm trying to be a public speaker. So I've done 4 public speaking gigs now. So I'm getting that going. But I went from I never want to talk about them. I never want to look at pictures of them. I just want to run from it. I went from that to now I want everyone to see them. I want everyone to know about them. I want to talk about them all the time.
That's awesome. I love the 1090 principle because it's so, right now it is so countercultural to what's going on. It feels like that you have a lot of people. I did a podcast just a couple of weeks ago on here about the victim mentality, and when people get caught in that trap of being a victim, when life happens to them instead of them happening to life. It's at Ohio State, they share this formula. You've probably heard it, you know, the E plus R equals O, right? Event plus response equals outcome. And we get so caught up in events and outcomes, but the one variable that we actually can impact in that equation is the response.
Yeah.
We're going to have events. I mean, you've had this tragic, horrible event happen, and now you decide, okay, like you can't change the event, but outcome can be affected by R, right?
Yes.
And so, and I love that. It goes right along with that 1090, right? That 90% now is going to be your response, and what you do with Blue, how you affect the lives of others, how you do these things like your podcast and the public speaking to really help people respond to adversity and to be resilient. So, man, that is super cool. And I would love to put the link to your podcast in our show notes as well. So,
that'd be awesome. I'd appreciate that.
So that people can see.
Yeah, I mean, like I was a high school basketball coach for a few years too, at my old high school. So I went back to West Jordan High School and was a head coach there for a couple of years. And I just remember every year tryouts would come around, and you just have to cut kids. And that's the worst part of the whole year, was cutting kids that you like. It's not fun. No one enjoys it. But it's just like, that's such a great opportunity for young athletes. And I honestly think let's just take 2 kids. So one kid makes the team, the other kid gets cut from the team. I honestly think if the parents and that kid handle being cut well, meaning they don't blame anyone for it, they take accountability where accountability should be accepted, that could be one of the best things that they ever go through in high school to help them become a better person later in their life. And the kid who makes the team might never learn that valuable lesson. So I really believe life's less about winning and losing. It's more about how you handle those 2 things, because it's inevitable. We're all going to experience those 2 things. It's a big deal. Now what? Life goes on. That's one thing I've learned. Life goes on. Like my family, this is an analogy I always use with my 1090 stuff. My family was killed, and then the next day my electric bill came. Like, it's brutal. That's the world. Like, it's brutal. Like, the world keeps going. It doesn't really care. And so success or failure, that's just part of it. But people handle success bad too. It could cripple them. And how many athletes experience great success and then it cripples them and they just fall apart? So 1090 is not just about handling failure. It's about handling success. If you don't handle success well either, then big deal. Like, it would have been better off if you would have lost or didn't succeed at all. So you become the captain, you become the CEO, you start your own business, you get the scholarship you wanted, whatever it is, big deal, big whoop. Like, now what? You got to keep going. And that's the mindset you have to have, win or lose. Okay. If you lose, okay, that sucked. Now what? What are you going to do? What are your options?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how you brought winning in as well. The response to
Yeah.
winning, that 90%. So the 10%, okay, you won, or you made the team, you got the scholarship, you got the contract, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But still, that's over. The electric bill's still coming. So now
Yeah.
you got
Exactly.
that 90%. How are you going to respond to that?
Yeah.
And my brother Sheldon Martin, he's a doctor of behavioral health, and he sits on our board at Especially for Athletes. And Sheldon talked about this thing called the reaction range, where a reaction range in mental health is, so let's say you have a young person with autism, for example. What you expect of that young person in certain areas of their life might be lower than you would expect from someone who's not with autism. And so, but there's this baseline, and the reaction range is how high functioning can we get this kid with some tools, some skills, some things like that. So he was talking about this reaction range, like from baseline to your greatest potential. And he shared the example of LeBron James. You and I played high school basketball. It's not that LeBron James outworked us, right? Like,
Yeah.
we could have outworked him.
No, I think you're right. I think
Yeah. And so he's 6'8", he's strong, he's just the perfect specimen to be an NBA star. So, but sometimes that becomes an impediment to some people, not to LeBron James, but there's other 6'8", strong, coordinated, fast, high jumping athletes who never became what LeBron James became. And the reason is they settle. That 10%, that's what happens to them. They're born with that body. But that 90%, they don't work. They're just always that best kid. Like we alluded to before, they walk on the court, it's so easy for them, and so they never become what they could have become because they settle for just being the best instead of their best. But pretty soon their best isn't the best as they climb up those ladders to success. So that's super profound what you brought up, that 10-90. The 90 response needs to apply not just to the difficult things in life, but how do we respond to our successes in life? Some people respond well to success. Some people become paralyzed by their own success and settle.
Honestly, I believe that. Like, I think success is sometimes the worst thing to happen to some people because it just ruins them. They can't handle all of it, whether it's all the money or the fame or whatever it is. And it just ends up doing them more damage than good because it's all perspective. It's all how you handle it. That's the one thing you're in constant control over is your thoughts and how you think and what your perspective is going to be. And that's a really powerful thing because those thoughts is what leads to our actions. So the power of the mind is incredible. And that's another thing that I learned is, the king isn't the happiest guy in the kingdom all the time. I really think the peasant or the merchant might be happy or just as happy. It's all perspective. So don't let success take your hunger away and desire to achieve things. But so 10-90, that's what we focus a lot on. What can you control? What are things people do to help them overcome obstacles?
We encourage athletes at their school to use their position, their spotlight is what we call it, the attention that comes to them because they're an athlete in the spotlight, to do good.
Yeah.
Now, some of us look back at our high school years, and none of us did this perfectly, I don't think, but you coached high school ball, you've played high school ball, you've been a college athlete, you've been in that spotlight. What advice do you have for high school athletes as they get ready to go back to school about the difference they can make in the life of their peers?
Yeah, I think you set that up really good because, athletes, man, I mean, we know how it is. A lot of people look up to them at the school. And it's just sad because sometimes those athletes are some mean people sometimes. And it goes back to it's what's in your control and how you use it. These high school athletes, they could use that, popularity, status to do a lot of good or to do a lot of bad or to do nothing. They could just, kind of be in the middle. And I think it gets lost on high school students. Like just simple things, man, like little simple stuff. You don't have to like take the kid out to lunch or like bring him a birthday present, but just like a high five or how you doing? And I honestly, I don't want to like change topics or anything, but I think the whole cell phone thing is just really different now. When I was in high school, there's really no cell phones. And if you had them, it was not how it is today type of thing where our face is just in them all the time. But cell phones just disguise how lonely people are, how lonely these high school kids are sometimes because they're at lunch all alone, but they have their phone. And I think some of us just think like, oh, like he's got the phone, he's talking to something. Like, no, he's really lonely. And I just just being a high school coach and a high school teacher, I just see that a lot about opportunities like that the athletes miss out on. But just go sit to that kid at lunch, compliment their shoes or something, just little thing, or just don't be mean to them. I just hate bullies, man. My nephew, Ryder, that was in the car accident, he had some bullies, and it just breaks my heart. And it breaks my heart because that's something that's within your control. And that's why it's really sad. The whole bullying thing that's within our control, man. You can't control how many touchdown passes you're going to get or if you're going to get any home runs, but you can control how you act with other people in your school.
Yeah.
Easy. Like you have control over that. It's one of the few things you do have. So it's the same story, man. It's the same answer is focus on what you can do. What can you control? And, people for me, like I lost a lot of family members and it's been interesting and it's been, I don't want to say good, but because it's sad, but it's been good to see how people respond to me because I've gone through so much and it's been really interesting to see how people can focus and find ways of what they can do for me. And that's been really special for me to witness is like people from all over the world, man, like New Zealand, like all over the world have reached out to me, just give me words of wisdom or encouragement. It means so much. It takes a village sometimes.
Yeah.
I definitely couldn't go through what I went through alone. And that's something that I'm really lucky and fortunate to have is I have a really strong family and parents and brothers and sisters. And I have a lot of good people around me to help me. And I need those people. I could not do this alone. Wouldn't have a chance. And so high school athletes, like, man, help people out that are alone, man. It's not fun being alone. It's a terrible feeling. So high fives, smile, compliment, something, man. Do something. What can you do? Focus on that and then do it for them.
Awesome.
Sorry, I went on a little rampage there.
That was beautiful, man. That was beautiful. You are awesome. You are an incredible example of someone who's resilient, responds well, and recognizes what's in your control. And puts all of your effort towards those things. And I love what you just said about, okay, there's certain things in your control and you could decide what you do with them. You could do bad things with them. You could do good things with them. And what determines good people, who's good and who maybe isn't good or doesn't make as big of a contribution is those who take whatever's within my control. I'm going to do it in such a way that it does good for other people. Mm-hmm. That's just a great life principle. The way we say it is eyes up and do the work.
Yeah. Hey, have you ever heard of clear eyes, full hearts can't lose?
No.
You ever heard of that one? Because I love the saying clear eyes, full hearts can't lose. And I got it from a TV show called Friday Night Lights. Mm-hmm. So it's about like a high school football team in Texas.
Right.
And the coach has this saying before every game. They're in the locker room, and he says to the team, clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Well, he says clear eyes, full hearts, and then the team chants back, can't lose. And essentially it's the same thing. What you're saying is we have to have clear eyes, meaning stay focused, understand the game plan, understand who you are, be self-aware, but also clear eyes is it's not about you. Like get your eyes off of yourself. Like, it's about other people. And that's what Clear Eyes really means is, hey, stop thinking about you. It's not about your statistics. It's not about how many points you score. It's not about you, dude. It's about the greater good. It's about the team. And that's one thing I learned. And my therapist told me this in one of our therapy sessions. He said, Mason, like kind of what you said earlier, like you've been dealt a bad hand. Like this is one of the worst stories I've heard. And he said, but you know what? It's not about you and it's not about blue. And I was just taken back. I'm like, what do you even mean by that? I was kind of frustrated, honestly. And then he's like, this car accident, he's like, this is about the 7 billion people that make up humanity. And he went on to tell me this. He said, Mason, if you wanted to like kill yourself, he's like, I will. He told me this. I promise he's a good therapist, but he said that. He's like, dude, if you wanted to kill yourself, I wouldn't blame you. But he also said, you could do so much good for so many people. So many people are hurting like you. So many people are alone like you. He's like, do you want them to feel alone? I'm like, no. And he kind of, it was like a pump up talk almost before like I went out to a game. Like I was pumped up. He's like, you could do so much good if you choose to. He's like, if you want. He's like, but it's up to you. And it was just a really powerful message that resonated with me. And I believed him. I thought he was right. And so I kind of had this decision. I'm like, okay, what path am I going to go down here? But yeah, I think that's a really, really powerful story.
Yeah.
It was that therapy session. Yeah. So that's Clear Eyes. Clear Eyes is, and that's what my therapist helped me understand was, okay, Mason, I know and trauma does that to you. Trauma just makes you really selfish because poor me, I lost this and this and this. And you just really don't have a lot of time and energy at the end of the day for other people. It's one of the worst things about it. It just makes you really selfish. And so the minute I was able to think more about other people, oh man, like it didn't heal me, but it got better, got a lot better. So that's Clear Eyes. And then the full hearts part is kind of what you were saying with Eyes Up, Do the Work is having that full heart is the action and 100% effort. And if you get knocked down, you get back up. And if you do those two things, if you always have clear eyes and a full heart, then despite what the scoreboard says or despite what happens in life, you're never going to lose because you have those two things. You have clear eyes and full hearts. And I love that because in a way, it helps me feel really connected with my family. And as I get to share my message about being resilient, I get to talk about them. And in a way, I feel like I still am never going to lose them in the idea that they're always with me and with the message that I'm giving. So clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. That's one that really resonates with me a lot. And I got that from that Friday Night Lights show. And I actually love that. This is kind of funny. I actually love that show so much, my wife and I did, that we named our first kid Riggins, who's a character from that show. Anyway, so that's how much we love the show. So I've always loved that saying, clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. So awesome. I think it's really similar to what you guys have going on too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the way you explained it is exactly, what we're trying to teach young athletes to do. And so, yeah, Mason, I appreciate you taking the time so much.
Yeah, man. Anytime. I chat all day, dude. So thanks, man.
We'll have to have you on again and have you get involved in some of our events. And we appreciate the way you've responded. It is inspiring to all of us. And as I hear you, I mean, just this conversation and the people who will listen to this, I know it's tough, crushing to lose your family the way you did, but all that I've heard you say, both in your YouTube videos, in this conversation, has inspired me. And so because of this event, that 10 that happened, that crushing 10, your response and your resilience has impacted me and will impact many others. And so I'm sure that your wife, your children, your brother would be super proud of the way you're responding. And I'm sure your parents are as well.
Yeah, thank you.
And so God bless you, friend.
You too, man.
You're an inspiration. And for all of you who are listening to this, we'll put the links in our bio so you can go listen to that 1090 podcast, and so that you can listen to some of the other things that Mason has said in his speaking engagements and learn how to get in contact with him. But thank you for joining the Sportlight podcast. Eyes up, do the work.
This has been the Sportlight podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.